Hi everyone, my name's Thomas and I'm the composer of the music for Fantasia Ambience. In this video I'm going to give you a brief breakdown of the process of composing and producing my track, Scarlet Sails, from the computer all the way to the scoring stage. So before I sit down to write a new piece, I normally have some sort of initial thoughts on what I want it to sound like and what direction I want to take it in. So for example, I knew I was recording with a large string band, so I wanted the strings to lead throughout the piece. Always try and write with the players in mind, whether that be if I'm just recording a single violin, which I do quite a lot, or even if it's a full orchestra really. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is my template in Logic. This has got all my sample libraries that I often use. I've got a lot of libraries by Spitfire Audio, quite a few from Orchestral tools as well, and quite a lot from various other developers. I use a very wide variety of sample libraries in my work. I pretty much start every track with this template. The only exception would be if it was a really particular kind of unique track, and then maybe I'd start from scratch and build it up like that. Because the thing is with using a template, if you're always using the same template, your music can start to sound all the same, which can be a problem. So with Scarlet Sails, as I said before, I wanted the strings to lead, and I wanted this sort of rich, soaring melody to make the most of the big string section that we'd be recording. So the first thing I did was come up with this melody, so I'll just quickly play for you on the piano how that melody goes. So once I'd composed that initial idea, I then programmed it with the string samples, and I'll play you that now so you can hear what that sounds like. So yeah, that's the main theme, played with the string samples. You can also hear that descending piano line, which just sort of adds a bit of movement. I didn't want it to sound too static, so nice bit of piano, just keeps things flowing. In terms of sample libraries, I'm mostly using Spitfire's Appassionata strings throughout the track for the legato lines. For the short strings, which you'll hear later, I'm using a little bit of Albion 1, and some of Spitfire Symphonic Motions. But yeah, to be honest, I didn't really want to spend lots of time making the demo sound that realistic, because I knew we'd be recording live strings at the end of it, so it wasn't much point in, spending hours on the mock-up. But yeah, so this melody in the strings is the basis of the entire track pretty much. It just keeps building and building, and eventually we'll get to a B section, which I'll play for you now. And we have this theme. So yeah, that's the B section all the way to the end. So quite a lot going on there. We've still obviously got the strings leading the charge, but we've also got the other instruments of the orchestra joining in as the piece progresses and builds. We've got the piano playing these quite fast arpeggios, which adds a nice sort of sparkling texture. I'll just play that on its own for you now so you can hear it. And we've also got these little descending woodwind flourishes, which just adds a little bit of filigree to the texture and a bit more interest overall, really. So I'll play that for you now. So you can also hear there's an oboe counterline, which I actually took out for the live recording because it just stood out a little bit too much, and the second violins were already playing it, so it's sort of unnecessary to be doubling there. So we got rid of it. It sounds quite nice though when it's played on its own, but it just didn't quite fit in the main texture, so yeah. So we've also got some brass, not very much because I didn't want the piece to be too big and epic, lose that whimsical feeling I was going for. But yeah, we've got some horns, just filling in the harmony in the last section. Just really helps add some richness to the texture. So yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of texture and things going on in the piece. So once I finish the track, the next step is to take all the MIDI that we're recording, so in this case it's just the strings we're recording, and then turn it into something that the players can actually read. So the first thing I'll do is quantize all the MIDI that's going to be notated, so in this case that's all the string parts. And I'll just make sure that everything's quantized to the grid, and also make sure the note lengths are nice and neat and finish in the right places. It just saves so much time if you do this before you put it into Sibelius, because it can look like an absolute mess if you put it in unquantized, and it's really hard to tidy up and takes a long time. So just making sure it's all quantized. As you can see, I'm doing that there. So once that's done and all the MIDI's nice and tidy, we just export it as a MIDI file, and then open it up in Sibelius, and then we can start orchestrating it. So this is the full score for the recording session. As you can see, it's just strings that we're recording. I'm not going to do a full breakdown of the orchestration in this video just because I want to keep it brief. But yeah, I mean, we've got the parts here as well. You can see the first violin part. It's super important for the parts to be as clear as possible, as the musicians will be sight reading them. They don't get to see them ahead of time at all. So you don't want any mistakes, as it really does take away valuable session time, and session time is very, very expensive. So once I'm finished with prepping the score and parts, everything has to be exported to PDFs so that they can be sent off to the studio, where they'll be printed, ready for the recording session. So this is by far my favourite part of the process, hearing the music come to life with real players. I booked a half-an-hour session with Budapest Scoring to record Scarlet Sails and another track called Cloud Spirit. This is some of the raw session footage. So that was some of the footage from the session. The audio on that was just from the camera mics, not the studio mics. But yeah, it's always an absolute privilege to be able to work with a professional orchestra like that. And that was actually my first orchestral session recording my own music. I've worked on many sessions before recording other people's music, so it was such a treat to be able to record mine this time. And a big shout out to Budapest Scoring and the conductor Geoffrey Pope. They were an absolute pleasure to work with. So the next steps after the recording session is a bit of audio editing. So that's pretty much deciding what takes to use. And then the track is mixed and mastered. But before I play you the final mastered track, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's been listening to my music these last few years. And especially those who listen to me over on the Fantasia Ambience channel. Your support means the absolute world to me, and it's my privilege to be able to bring you all new music. You can listen to the full version of Scarlet Sails here on this channel, or over on Spotify. But for now, here's a taste of the final mastered version.